Hello, friends. Thanks for joining us on another edition of the Bleed Los podcast. This podcast, once again, is brought to you by our good friends at FOCO. Baseball starting 1 week from today? Question mark? Maybe tomorrow? I don't even know what day it is. But anyway, in a week, baseball's back. It's back, it's back, it's back. So based on that, obviously you need some new Dodgers gear, right? Whether it's, maybe a couple bobbleheads or, I don't know, some office stuff like I do. Be it as it may, if you go to the description of this podcast on whatever platform you're listening to us on, there's a link that's going to take you to the FOCO store and, add whatever you want to the cart. Go ahead and get that added in there. And once you go to check out, a discount will be applied for being a loyal listener to this here podcast. Big, huge thanks to FOCO. They've been killing it with the world champion bobbleheads as well. If you had a chance to snag it, the Tommy Lasorda joint was sick. So huge thanks to them and for being supporters of this podcast. And we're also brought to you by Bleed Los, www.bleedlos.com. They have all of the merch, Dodgers related, of course. I keep talking about that Joe Kelly Fight Club shirt. It's there. That's one of my favorites ever. For being a listener to this here podcast, if you go to that website, upon checkout, enter Bleed Los Pod 10, and you'll save 10%. So boom, easy enough. Huge thanks to them, and once again, thank you guys for being supporters of this here podcast. Please like, subscribe, rate, all that jazz. Like I mentioned last week, it helps us in booking guests, and we want to get guests for you guys, get you some solid interviews. We're gonna try to get Rachel Luba on this joint, so things like that. It'll help, that sort of, those little things, if you will, to help us get content. So huge thanks to you guys for the support, and as always, with those promo codes, all that jazz, terms and conditions do apply. Please see those respective websites for details. But for now, here is another edition of the Bleed Los podcast. It's a week, 1 week until opening day, I think. Wait, no, yeah, it's 1 week. I lost my days for a second. I'm sorry, but it's your boys Alonso y Juan, and even though it's a week away, there's still some buffoonery going on, Juan, and we're just gonna get into it. The MLB is gonna attempt to crack down on foreign substances, and they've sent out a memo to everyone. If you haven't seen that memo, ESPN did an article on it. All the other the publications, if you will. But essentially, they're going to increase monitoring by compliance officers, inspections of baseballs taken out of play that will use a third party lab, to check for substances, and spin rate analysis. So I'm just kind of curious, and I know we've been talking about it offline, but I want to hear from you in your voice, if you will. I'm looking at this from the player perspective, and you're looking at this obviously from the fan perspective. I'm kind of curious how you take of all of this and going into the season, especially with how much the game has changed since the Need and Fewer days.
Well, I'll tell you this. I want to meet the guy. I hope Major League Baseball announces who is the guy who came up with this brilliant idea that we needed to enforce this rule. Because I got to tell you, it didn't take long. But again, I don't know why Robert Manfred is the commissioner of Major League Baseball, because it is obvious to me that Manfred hates baseball. Why? I mean, your job as the commissioner is to promote the game, right? Your job as the commissioner is to make baseball appealing, make more people want to watch it. So your idea is we're going to point out all the people who cheat in our game. And mind you, you're still not going to do anything about a team that literally cheated, used all this technology to cheat. You're going to let them off scot-free. But here you're going to go nickel and dime people for pitching, and I know we've had this conversation offline, and you say this, Alonzo, you know this by experience. Everybody's doing this. Everybody's doing this. And it just drives me nuts, because here are these pitchers, they're out there. You already changed the ball this year. Okay. Even though some pitchers are saying, well, it hasn't really changed that much. Other pitchers are saying they have noticed a difference, that it's the stitching is a little higher. Okay. You already admitted that you changed the ball. I mean, you do everything to make baseball look bad. And here you, instead of doing something to promote your players, I mean, this is the only sport that a family can afford to go see. Okay. Instead of trying to champion that, instead of pushing that out so more and more people will love baseball, your big ta-da is, we're going to go out here and we're going to catch these cheaters, even though every pitcher in Major League Baseball is probably doing this.
For the record, I also believe, well, I might be wrong here, but Roger, if you wouldn't mind looking this up, I believe it's Chris Davis, former player Chris Davis, who's now in the MLB office, who is enforcing this, from my understanding, because I believe that's the dude that's like on-field personnel or something. I don't know what his role is, but anyway, I agree with you. And like I said, obviously I'm going to look at this from the player perspective. Everyone does something to this effect, whether it's nicking a ball, whether it's spiking a ball, stupid things like sunblock, lotion. I mean, there's clubhouse guys that's their specialty. Obviously, everyone heard about that guy that worked for my former employer, the Angels, that learned from another guy that was there how to do that stuff and was selling that stuff and making it for Verlander. So it's one of those things where everyone to a certain degree does it. I'm of the party that I don't, I know a lot of guys have said, oh, well, it's performance enhancing. It's like the equivalent of steroids, etc. The baseball with the raised seams is just as performance enhancing, in my opinion, as any of those substances. If anything, you're just helping the pitcher because it's just going to give him a better grip. So that's why, to me, it's like, what are we doing? We're gonna, like you said, nickel and dime certain things that don't make sense. And also, for people that aren't aware, those compliance officers that are supposed to monitor that stuff, they were originally there. Literally, their job was to make sure that guys did not have cans of dip in dugouts. That was their job. If you openly saw a can of dip, it was a fine. And especially after Tony Gwynn passed away, R.I.P. Tony Gwynn, they wanted to enforce it, because they, guys dip, but at the same time, they didn't want the kids to see the cans of dip in the dugouts. Okay, I can understand that. I can get that. I hid cans of dip when I worked in the game for guys at all levels of the game in the most random places in dugouts. So that way those guys wouldn't see anything because they define you. Because what's going to happen here? Because obviously already, for those of you that aren't aware, there's an unwritten rule. And as far as the unwritten rule goes, is no one does the thing where, hey, other side is doing whatever to the baseball. That's going to happen now for sure. It's going to piss someone off. It's going to create turmoil as far as that goes. And then I am almost willing to guarantee that the first guy that gets accused of that stuff is someone that doesn't do that stuff, like a reliever, something like that. So it's just opening a giant can of worms. And to your point, Juan, this is still going to just expose MLB in the sense that they didn't do anything about the Astros. They did nothing about the Astros whatsoever. And I go back to this point. MLB did nothing about steroids into this.
Exactly.
What I mean? So it's one of those things where you can't sit here and get all high and mighty and try to enforce all these, I'm going to call this trivial just because this has been going on for so long, that it doesn't make any sense whatsoever now. And then it's funny because now that they're doing this, there's a bunch of hitters that are basically calling this performance enhancing drugs, if you will, for pitchers. That's garbage. And then I don't remember who it was. Someone yesterday or today tweeted out that they would rather get hit by someone that isn't using that stuff than to get struck out by someone that's using the stuff. To me, that makes no sense, just because it's like, bro, you want to get hit in the head?
Yeah.
So that's what doesn't make sense to me. Because then the other caveat to it is, okay, so then if you're going to nitpick that, then start nitpicking on cork bats. If you're not going to pick on cork bats, then what are we doing here? So it goes both ways. Oh, Roger Davis, thank you. Sorry, wrong Davis. I digress. I apologize, Mr. Chris Davis. I got him confused with.
You just slandered Chris
I
Davis.
did. I'm sorry, man. I'm so they're gonna.
Wasn't he the guy that went like over 28 with the Orioles?
Well, there's two Chris. Though I think Chris Davis is three, I believe.
Oh,
That
okay.
there's that Chris Davis, and then the Chris Davis that played for the Oakland Athletics for a few
Yeah.
years, and then the other Chris Davis that played for the Oakland Athletics that just went to Texas.
Yeah.
So my bad. Roger Davis, though, like, come on, man. Like that's I don't get it. It doesn't make a lot of sense because of all the things that they need to be focusing on. This is the last thing that they should be focusing on.
Exactly.
And even that, what's it gonna change? It's maybe gonna change a handful of strikeouts, in my opinion. Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. But here's my thing. Okay, if you're going to do this, if you're going to go after the pitchers in this way, then I think you need to go after every hitter that wears body armor at the plate. I think the body armor is such bullshit because Barry Bonds, when he used to, I mean, he looked like he was in a full night outfit, protecting his elbow. You can literally stand on top of the plate. You're taking away half of the plate from the pitcher. And if you get hit, it doesn't matter because you're wearing body armor. It doesn't hurt you. Like those guys back in the 60s when Bob Gibson was drilling them, I guarantee you they weren't going to choke up on the plate. I think it's just BS that the hitters are allowed to protect themselves in this way. And then we're going to go after the pitchers. I mean, baseball, you said it perfectly. I mean, they have their priorities so out of whack. And I mean, look, let's get into it right now. Who's going to be the primary target for this? I know you said that it's going to be, somebody who's not doing it, but I think somebody they're going to go after, they're going to try to make an example of is Trevor Bauer.
Oh, absolutely.
And why? Because Trevor Bauer called out all those Astros players, right? And what did he say? He said he knew how they were cheating. He knew. So here he is, because he's been so outspoken on it. I bet you they're going to go. I mean, what's to stop the Rockies opening weekend from them going up to the umpire and say, check his glove?
And that's and the other point I was going to make. To me, I mean, in the rule book, if you go and look at the rule, and by the way, if you're curious, it's Rule 602, Section 8. No, it's just 602. Sorry. Essentially, what it comes down to, it's up to the umpire's judgment to see if such a violation has occurred, and the umpire can either throw the player out and the manager, or they just warn both sides. What the hell? Like, because again, the other for me, it's a tit for tat thing. Okay, you don't want the pitcher to use foreign substances, then eliminate those foreign substances from position players. Just I mean, at the end of the day, the position players use it just as much. It's just like that picture that we all saw when they released this thing, right? The Yadier Molina picture where he's standing up. There's a ball stuck to his chest protector and both of his hands are in the air. Why is it stuck to him? Because he's probably using pine tar. So, and there's plenty of position players that use it to make transfers easy. They, the tops of their gloves, the insides of their gloves in some cases. So that's why, and even at that, the compliance officer is going to do what? Just hyper focus on the pitcher and no one else. Like, come on, man. Like it has to go both ways. You can't do it. You can't go about it that way.
That's such a good point, because if they're just focusing on the pitcher, guess what? The catcher is touching the ball just as much as the pitcher.
Absolutely.
If the catcher is covered in pine tar and he's putting it all over the ball, how can then you sit there and say it's the pitcher doing it? How do you not know that it's the catcher who's doing it? It's again, I want, if Raji Davis is the guy who came up with this idea, I just feel that the people that work in Major League Baseball's front office are doing more to hurt the game than to help it. And it just would be nice if the people who worked in Major League Baseball's front office loved baseball as much as the people who watch it.
No, and that's a great point. And the irony is, I mean, him and Nick Hundley and Gregor Blanco are in the roles of senior directors of on-field operations. They're dudes that just got done playing. not too long ago, Rajay Davis crushed a bomb in the World Series against the Cubs.
Yeah.
So it's not too long ago that my man left that world to go to that world. So I'm also curious to see the players' reaction, because obviously there's been players' reaction that have varied. But to me, it's crazy. It's crazy that this is the thing that they're focusing on. And again, if they want the game to grow, this is not the way for it to grow whatsoever. If anything, it's just going to set it back. But you know what? I'll get off my soapbox now.
Do you think they went to the players to get any feedback on this,
Hell no.
or they just
Hell
sprung
no.
it? So they just sprung it on them a week before the season's about to start.
Yeah, because if they would have, they know that the players would have either pushed back in a crazy immense way or said nothing. And a part of it is because we've talked about it before. There's a looming lockout coming. I mean, it's coming.
Yeah.
And if these sorts of things are further indicators of stuff like that's coming, and the players just would have been like, nah, like we're not even going to entertain that, because you're springing this on us, like you said, a week before the season starting. So I mean, if the perfect time to do this would have been prior to spring training.
Well, it's like the whole DH thing, the universal DH thing. It's just like, wait, did you guys just barely come up with this idea right now? And if so, I really have to question you guys' preparation. I mean, it's incredibly frustrating, because here we are now spending, instead of talking about the hope and baseball's getting ready to start, and that are all the teams that might have a chance of doing something special this year. Instead, we're spending time talking about how Major League Baseball wants to catch all the cheaters in their sport. So instead of, trying to convince everyone that we have the best athletes in the world, we want to go out of our way to show everybody we have the most cheaters in the world.
And then they're not actually busting the actual cheaters. Like I told you, when shit's gonna hit the fan is the day that, like an Altuve or a Bregman, or a Correa, if they are considered, make it to the Hall. That's just going to open that can of worms again. And truthfully, it shouldn't have been that way, because they should have just nipped it in the butt when they had the opportunity. But look where we are now.
Exactly.
So like you said, it's either Rob Manfred really hates baseball, or Rob Manfred really hates baseball. Like there's no other way about it. I mean, it just
great, Alonso. Now he's never going to come on.
I mean, let's be 100% honest. I don't think he would have came on here, because the first question would have been like, hey, follow-up question to my first question. Why do you hate baseball so much, my guy? Like,
exactly.
It just doesn't make any damn sense. None of it does. But you know what? I'm just a guy on a podcast, so what do I know? But transitioning to things that we kind of know, we do know that the Dodgers have made some roster cuts, and one of those roster cuts today went down. And Jimmy Nelson has made the 40-man roster. So I mean, I'm still of the party that I think he's going to make the big team, come a week from now, I guess, since the season opens a week from now. But interestingly enough, Matt Davidson, a guy that we talked about a lot last week, was sent down. Garrett Clevenger was sent down. Nick Robertson, James Pazos, FedEx, Tim Fedorovich, who I legitimately had no idea was with the Dodgers currently, was also sent down. Interestingly enough, though, Zach McKinstry has not been sent down from what I've seen. So I find that interesting. So that's, because I know that they want a bat for the right, right-handed bat for the bench. So there's a possibility there. Jimmy Nelson is trending towards making the team. And also, a bit of a news, if you will, is Mr. Rios is going to play, I think, tomorrow or today, because he's slightly injured. You guys were talking about it a little earlier, but
he had some hamstring issues. So
thank you.
The report is that from Roberts is that we are recording this on a Thursday, so he would be playing on Friday.
Okay. But be that as it may, so Joe Kelly, Brusdar Gratterall, and Mitch White and Brandon Morrow aren't expected to pitch in a game this spring and won't be ready by opening day. So that means that only basically 2 pitching roster cuts are left for the Dodgers if they decide to roll with their 13, and only 1 more if they want to keep 14. So that, obviously that makes it a little easier as far as that goes. But the bench is still kind of a hot topic. I was honestly thinking Matt Davidson was going to make the team. I'm surprised that he's not, but I mean, it could be a litany of things. It could be that they want him to work on stuff, whatever. Maybe even get regular reps up until the postseason, whatever the case may be. But I'm kind of curious. What say you to the Jimmy Nelson addition to the roster? and with where they're currently at as far as kind of as they feel out this roster, if you will?
For me, he was one of the people I really wanted to see because, again, like I talked about it on the last episode, if we get what he did in 2017 with the Brewers, I mean, that's going to be great. Right now, to me, I think the bullpen, even without Bruce Dar, without Joe Kelly, like to me, the bullpen looks really good. It looks really sharp. It's the thing that I think I have the most confidence in right now going into the season. But let me ask you this: is it me, or did spring training just go by really, really fast? Like, I was a little bit concerned that, especially with Bueller's last outing, Bauer's last outing, Kershaw's last two outings, that maybe these guys didn't get enough time in spring training to gear up for the season because, they didn't have split squad games this year. So I'm curious as to see, like I said, the starting pitching going into the season was supposed to be like, we have like 8 potential starters, but I got to say, I think the bullpen is the pitching from the bullpen is what impressed me the most. In terms of the bench, I think that has the most question marks, because I have to say, I don't think there hasn't been anybody that is going to be a potential bench player that has really stood out to me. And maybe I'm comparing it to the fact that Jock keeps hitting home runs with the Cubs and that we don't have Geek yet. But if you look at Matt Beatty's numbers, they're kind of solid. It's been a solid spring. I don't know, Babyface, do you have McKinstry's numbers for the spring? There hasn't been anybody that has really stood out in terms of the bench players. I am happy to see that Chris Taylor's been having a really good spring and Gavin Lux has had a really good spring. I think Gavin Lux having a good spring is really important for him because he struggled. There was a game I was watching where Rick Monday was just saying that that's probably the first time that Gavin Lux has ever struggled in his entire baseball career. I mean, going up until that point, that guy was probably a stud at every level of baseball that he played. And then all of a sudden he got to the big leagues and it's like, oh, there's people here that are just as good, if not better than me. So for him to have as good a spring training as he's had, I think is very encouraging. So let me get this straight, Babyface. So McKinstry is hitting 353 for the spring. Am I reading that correctly? Wait,
yeah, 350. Yeah, 353, 1 home run.
So 34 hits, 5 doubles, and a home run.
Wait, maybe not. No. 34 at bats, 34 at bats, 5 runs, 12 hits, 1 home run, 6 RBIs, 1 stolen base. 353, 371 OBP, 842 OPS.
See, this is what I'm talking about. I mean, doesn't spring training feel a lot shorter to you guys? I mean, he's only got 34 at bats.
Well, like with spring, so first of all, March is the shortest year that we've had since 2020. It flew by. I was looking at the calendar today. And I was like, how is it already the 25th ish of March when literally it flew by? For me, the dude that stood out of all those guys, it's a tie between Chris Taylor and Gavin Lux. And let me tell you why. Gavin Lux was given the keys to the kingdom this offseason, even with how everything went down last year with him showing up late to camp, evidently not in great shape, all sorts of stuff, right? They basically said, listen, man, this is your job to lose, so go get it. And it's not often that you really get that as a young kid. The real last guy that I can think of that they kind of gave the keys to the kingdom to, if you will, like in a supposition, was Derek Jeter. Derek Jeter got the shortstop gig, not the best shortstop in the world, right? But he went out and grinded, and he's one of those dudes, even up until he retired, he was taking infield every day. So he understood the importance of the job that he had. And I think Gavin kind of took that approach. Gavin was, obviously the Dodgers gave him they told him, they sat him down and, hey, we need you to work on stuff. Dino Ebel worked with him all off season on stuff, and they continue to grind and look, and it's paid off, obviously. And now, he's set to be the opening day starter at second base for the Los Angeles Dodgers. It's not a bad thing. I think Chris Taylor, though, stepped up huge. I think he kind of showed everyone that he's going to fill that void of the super sub, if you will, with the lack of Kike and with the lack of Jock. And that's huge for the Dodgers because he can give AJ Pollock days off. He can give Justin Turner days off if need be. As a matter of fact, he can give Gavin Lux days off too if he wants. So, and that's we talk about the embarrassment of riches of the Dodgers. They have all that flexibility because before we even talk about, Zach McKinstry, you still have Matt Beatty. You still have, those guys that are still versatile, that they can put them in those different positions. Cody Bellinger can play 2 positions. Max Muncy can play a handful of positions. So, again, everyone had maybe a quieter spring, if you will, just because of everything that's going on, but they didn't struggle. They still went out and did their work and they got the reps in. And that's the whole reason that they do spring training, to kind of get everyone back in the groove of things. And Chris Taylor hitting 4 home runs this year, or this spring rather, it's not a bad way to go. I mean, a lot of people were worried about his power, if you will. And I've, for one, have never been worried about Chris Taylor, at least since he's been in the Dodgers organization, just because he was one of those diamonds in the rough that the Dodgers just found randomly coming out of Seattle. And look what they did. I mean, they obviously have a history of doing that with Justin Turner, now with him, and here we are. But I mean, for me, I mean, if there's a spring training MVP, I'd give it to those 2 guys. I wouldn't give it to Corey. The only reason I wouldn't give it to Corey is because Corey's white hot, and everyone knows what that dude's capable of. But I mean, those 2 guys, they stepped up huge, and I think it's going to be tremendous for the Dodgers because Gavin Lux, I mean, again, they're giving him the keys to the kingdom, and where it's going to kind of show, okay, you had a great spring, now transition it to 162 games, and let's see what he does. But I feel like everyone had a solid spring. Everyone did it, especially, like I said, those 2 guys. And the dude that I was surprised that still had a solid spring, even though he hasn't had reps, was Cody Bellinger. Cody Bellinger had a great spring. He's looking great. He's working on that stance, and he didn't come out struggling. That's what you want to see out of your guys going into the season.
Hey, Babyface, do you have Muncy's numbers? Muncy is the one that concerns me a little bit. And only because of this. I thought the jury was still out on Muncy last year. Well, actually, no, not last year, but in 2019. And he had a really good season. His batting average dropped. I would like to see his batting average a little higher. And he was fine last year. A guy that's been in the minor leagues for as long as he was in the minor leagues, and then the Dodgers just found gold. I was really thinking to myself, okay, is Muncy going to be a one-year wonder, or is Muncy going to be a guy who can consistently, put up those numbers? And if he does do that, I mean, it's great, because if Gavin Lux keeps playing if Gavin Lux can actually play this way, the way he's playing in spring training, if he can carry that over into the season, I think it's good for the Dodgers for many reasons, because then, as you said, Chris Taylor can be that super sub. Chris Taylor can go ahead and spell Pollock in left. He can spell Corey at short a couple of days out of the week. He can go ahead and do all that stuff because Lux is holding down first. And if Muncy, is consistent, then we can keep Muncy at first. I'm sorry, Lux could hold on second. And we can keep Muncy at first. If we have to then start spelling first base too, because Muncy is struggling, that means maybe Bellinger starts playing more at first base. And then, or maybe we start transitioning Justin Turner into first base. So Muncy is somebody that I'm going to be keeping my eye on as the season starts, just to see, maybe it's just spring training, but I mean, he hit 229 in spring. He had 1 home run. So I'm curious to see about Muncy, but you're right about everybody else. Everybody else looks like they're pretty much, ready to start the season. But the one thing about Muncy, I will say this, he was still getting his walks in spring training. So I just don't know how I feel about your possible number 4 hitter in a lineup, always looking for a walk instead of that big hit.
I've never been worried about Max for a couple of reasons. One, Max is not the kind of guy that's going to hit for average, if that makes sense. And if we look at his career numbers and you look at his spring numbers, that shows that he's not your typical four hitter. That dude obviously is patient at the plate, and he's going to go out and try to get those pitch counts up. That's the kind of he's your traditional hitter of old, right? Whereas now everyone swings first pitch. They're trying to get that that bomb, if you will. The other thing about Max that I like is the intangible that he has is his OPS. That dude gets on base, whether it's again by walks, whether it's by bloop singles, or he hits bombs. So that's why the Dodgers kind of keep him where he's at. In that, Babyface just said that Dave or Doc Roberts just said that he might have Cody at 4 this year, but he's kind of looking at it. That makes sense to me because again, if you have your murderer's row of hitters, going into a Muncy, a Chris Taylor, a Gavin Lux, Will Smith when he gets going, all those guys. It's not a bad issue to have where if those guys are just contact hitters and you can get, Max on, it's not a bad move because it's not like Max can't move either. You know what I mean? So, he brings other intangibles. And again, it comes back to the way that this Dodgers team is built. They're just all really good in their own way. And not to take away from Max either, his defense is legit. He can play first. He can play basically the entire diamond. So he brings that to the table too, where if someone needs, Gavin needs a day off, he can play second. So, it's one of those things where I'm not overly worried about Max, but I see your point as far as, okay, this dude isn't hitting like everyone else, but it also doesn't help when Mookie Betts, Corey Seager, Cody Bellinger are all in the lineup ahead of Max Muncy.
So that is true. That's a very good point. I'm comparing him to these other guys, are almost, all superstars.
Yeah. So, I mean, but it's a fair assessment because when you go from those guys to Max, it's like, there's a drop off. And really, if you know anything about the game, it's a drop off, but it's not a drop off that it's like, oh, this dude is absolute garbage. Why the hell is he in the lineup every day? So
I'm rooting for Muncy just because I love that damn bat flip of his. When he hits a home run, to me, his bat flip is natural. There's nothing like showy. It's just a quick snap, and it's very pleasing to the eye. I'll tell you that.
No, absolutely. And you know what? I love his swing. He's got one of the better, nicer, smoother swings, even when he hits bombs. And it's one of those things where it's like, okay, I get it. Like, I get it. I get why you're here. But moving on though, one thing that we wanted to do since, the season starts in a week, why not make our too soon to make predictions? So Juan, I wanted to hear your prediction on AL and NL Cy Young, NL, AL MVP, and who wins the pennant in each league. And then one off, if you will, is who will win the batting title in each league. So go ahead.
Wow. For the National League, the Cy Young for me, I'm going with Jacob deGrom. I mean, from what I've seen in spring training, the guy is solid, and he's just until the guy shows me that he's losing it. I'm going to go with that guy. I mean, he puts up ridiculous numbers year after year. So Jacob deGrom, I'm going to be honest with you, in the American League, I know it might be a combination of a hot take, and maybe it's because I kind of just want to will this into existence because I'm just totally curious about it. Shohei Ohtani. I'm really curious to see if this dude can play and pitch. I mean, he made Fernando Tatis Jr. look ridiculous the other day. I was watching the highlights. He just threw him, and he throws hard. I always, every time I watch that guy pitch, I lose sight as how hard he throws. But he also has some nice off-speed pitches, and poor Tatis just didn't stand a chance there. So I'm curious, and that's more just for rooting purposes and totally throwing logic out the window.
Right.
But I would like to see Ohtani, and also I don't see any clear-cut favorite in the American League. I mean, like Garrett Cole, I just don't see in the American League any team being dominant or any pitcher really being like the likes of Jacob deGrom. And deGrom, even though, isn't deGrom almost like the same age as Kershaw? Or maybe he might be a few years younger.
I actually don't know.
But that dude looks like he is, he's looking good. For the NL MVP, wow, that's, I haven't really.
DeGrom's 32, by the way.
So he is the same age as Kershaw.
Yeah. Kershaw, I believe, turns, if he's not 33, he's going to turn 33, I believe.
He just turned 33 2 days ago.
Okay, so he's 1 year younger than Kershaw.
It also makes me feel like garbage because I believe he's a year younger than I am, so that's cool. That's fine.
For the NL MVP, I think this is gonna probably piss off a lot of Dodger fans, but I'm gonna go with Nolan Arenado with the Cardinals. I think Nolan maybe he's gonna have something to prove in terms of him forcing himself out of Colorado. I think the fact that he also signed that ridiculous contract with, look, it's easy for me to say ridiculous. It's a lot of money. You take that money, it's not his fault that Colorado doesn't know how to run a baseball team. So Arenado would be my pick for NL MVP. AL MVP. Look, how can you pick against the best baseball player in the league, and that's Mike Trout? I know that's really going out on the limb and it's a horrible pick, but I think Trout is definitely going to be my AL MVP. And then what were the other things that you wanted? You wanted
pennant for both leagues.
Okay, so for the National League, I'm picking the Dodgers. And for the American League,
shocking, holy shit.
for the American League, they just had a really bad injury. I was tempted to go with the White Sox. I really was tempted with them. But then I remembered that Tony La Russa is their manager, and I can't stand that guy. And I feel bad because I want to root for the White Sox. I got a lot of friends in Chicago who are White Sox fans. So I would love to see a Dodgers-White Sox World Series so we can have some skin in the game, so to speak. But then I remembered that Tony La Russa is their manager, and I'm just like, fuck that guy.
That's fair. That's fair.
Exactly. So I think the Yankees. So I think we're going to get the El Clásico, as they say it in Spanish. I think we're going to get the Dodgers and the Yankees.
So ironically, the Yankees are the favorite to win the AL pennant. So
So I went chalk. Are you saying that I just went chalk the whole way?
You went chalk on that one. Cy Young, you did not though for the AL. The AL, the favorite is Garrett Cole. So you did say that but just for the record, Shohei Ohtani is not on this list. So, but you know what? I like that. Out of all your bold picks, especially that American League MVP, that's a bold strategy. We'll see how that plays out. But
and I'm already going to see the tweets about, there goes Juan loving Mike Trout again. Look, dude. I mean, just be honest with yourselves. The guy you need to appreciate him now because sooner or later his skills might start diminishing, and you're not going to see how good he is anymore. He's gonna lose it. So I have no shame in my love for Mike Trout, even though he plays for a communist team at Disneyland.
And you know what? You're 100% right. That's my pick to win the AL MVP. I know that's bold, really, really, really bold, but it's not even close in the American League. The only dude I could maybe think of that is even in the realm of being able to be like, okay, this dude should be considered second for AL MVP. Alex Bregman, maybe Aaron Judge. That's about it. Like there isn't really anyone. Matt Chapman, like those are like the three guys that I'd be like, okay, those are the dudes that are going to end up being better than him. Shohei Ohtani, even, like that's about it. So that gives you like how wide that is for my NL MVP. I'm torn. I'm either thinking Ronald Acuna Jr. or Juan Soto. And let me tell you why. Ronald Acuna Jr. is a bad man. That's a bad dude. That dude can ball. Juan Soto though he's one of those dudes that he's so good, but because of where he plays, no one sees him. It's almost like the Trout effect.
Yeah.
And that dude's so good, it's insane. So if I were to go 1A, 1B, as far as like who that would be, it'd be that. The only reason I don't have a lock on that is because the other like dark horse that I can see coming in is Mookie Betts. And the irony is those dudes are all basically tied up for 1, 2, and 3 for like the odds to win it.
No, exactly. And I know Babyface is having a conniption over there because we're not picking any Dodgers to this. But this is the reason why I didn't pick any Dodgers, because I think these guys are going to take votes away from each other.
Yeah, absolutely.
I expect Mookie to have a very good year. So if Corey Seager has the year that we all expect him to have, I think voters are going to sit there and they're going to go, oh, well, look at that lineup. They're going to use how good the Dodgers are against yeah. Exactly. So that's why. So calm down, Babyface. I mean, I can't sit there and pick Dodgers for every. I'd be such a homer, and people would just. I'm not going to be Michael Thompson.
Believe it or not, Roger, there is better baseball players than all the players that play for the Los Angeles Dodgers. It's crazy. I know. It doesn't make any damn sense, but it's true. For Cy Young for the American League, I'm going Lucas Giolito. That is legit. I know you hate Tony La Russa, but I don't hate any of their pitchers.
Yeah, I don't hate the White Sox players. I just think Tony La Russa is a douchebag.
No, and I agree. And the thing is the White Sox are going to be good. And no one is going to see it coming because everyone's been talking about the Yankees in the American League. And that's who I think is going to win the pennant. It's the Yankees. But the White Sox are going to put up a fight. Granted, the Yankees have Garrett Cole. They're good. Another dark horse to be able to go out and win the Cy Young in the American League is Shane Bieber. But again, that shows you the disparity between all those teams because the Indians are probably not going to be very good. The White Sox should be pretty good. And then it's the Yankees. I mean, it's the Yankees in the field, in my opinion, in the American League. Obviously, the Dodgers.
Who's the favorite to win the NL MVP on what you were looking at?
Juan Soto.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Juan Soto is. Even before I looked at that, he was still my pick. The other, I mean, if I'm honest, the only Dodger that I if I were to pick right now, that to win MVP, it'd probably be Corey Seager.
Mm-hmm.
That's no knock on the rest of the Dodgers. It's just Corey's just playing out of his mind right now. And I think he's going to be on one, not just because he's a free agent, but it's just because everyone's been saying, oh, you're a top, 10 shortstop. You're not even a top 5. You're not even a top 3. So it's like, okay, hold my beer. Let me go show everyone how untrue that is.
Right.
And then for the NL Cy Young, man, it's super hard to pick against the dude that I'm going to probably pick against right now and go Jacob deGrom, but I'm going to go Jacob deGrom. I really want to go Max Scherzer because he's been pitching lights out, and it's Max Scherzer. And Mad Max, even though he's 48, 49, 50 years old, somewhere in there, that dude can still ball. So it's kind of hard to pick against him. But I'm going Jacob deGrom because he's legit. It's insane how his breaking ball just moves. And then to win the pennants, Yankees, Dodgers, El Clásico, Dodgers win in 6.
Nice. So then the only thing we missed was those batting title, the question.
Yes. So for me, the batting title in the AL, I think it's going to be Shohei Ohtani. Yeah, I'm going Shohei. He's legit, man. Like, I don't give a damn what anyone says about how injury prone he's been. That dude's legit. And then in the NL, I think it's going to be Corey Seager.
I mean, you're all in on the Corey Seager, aren't you?
I am expecting Corey to have such a monster year that it's going to force the Dodgers to begin negotiating in the summer.
Well, I mean, that was the title of our podcast last year. Last week.
And I'm sticking to
it. Corey, how much money do you want? So for me, I think the person that's going to win the NL betting title, and I expect him to have a bounce back year, is Christian Yelich. I don't know. I don't know what happened to Yelich last year. I don't know if it was the pandemic. I don't know if he was healthy, but he batting average wise, that was not the Christian Yelich that I had seen. I think Christian Yelich, the ballpark that he plays in, the fact that the guy has speed, I think he has all the tools to get hits and win the batting championship. And in the American League, the guy is just a professional hitter. I wish the rumors were true that the Dodgers were really thinking of signing him, and maybe he didn't work. But ever since he played for the Rockies, I just love watching this guy hit, and that's DJ LeMahieu. I think DJ LeMahieu is going to win the batting title again in the American League. I know I'm not going out on limbs here picking those two guys, but I think those guys are just consistent. They're consistent hitters. And they're not, even though they have pop and they can hit home runs, they're not guys that I feel have holes in their swings. They're not guys that, I feel in order to win the batting title, you got to have a solid contact swing. And I think those two guys have it.
Real quick. Sorry, I just had to look up this just to make sure that I'm not full of it. Okay. Real quick. I'm curious to who you think is going to hit the most home runs in all of baseball. I'm going to make my pick first. It's going to be super bold. It's a crazy hot take. You're not even going to believe this, but it's Mike Trout.
It's hard. It's hard for me to argue with you. I'm gonna in the American League, I'm gonna go with a little outside. Maybe it's not outside.
I'm saying all of baseball, not just the American.
Oh, okay. All of baseball. Geez, I'm gonna go with Nelson Cruz because I feel like that's all that guy does is hit home runs.
Wow. I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah.
So on that curveball, Roger, I want to hear who you pick for the NL, AL MVP, NL, AL Cy Young, batting title champs, and most home runs, just like we did. And then I'm not even going to ask you the pennant stuff because I already know the answers to that.
So let's see. AL MVP, I guess Trout, right?
God, look at it. Do you see how he struggled to say that? Like, it hurts his whole body to just recognize that the guy is good. I mean,
I wish that I would have recorded this, but I saw his actual soul leave his body.
Exactly. His soul totally left his body.
Yeah. I guess he'll be in the top two. So Trout.
Wow.
NL MVP. Corey Seager or Mookie Betts.
There it is.
Wow.
There it is. I was waiting for it. Co-MVPs, Los Angeles Dodgers.
Exactly.
AL Cy Young. Either Shane Bieber or Garrett Cole.
Not a Dodger. Wow.
Yeah.
But again, not a Dodger.
NL Cy Young. Top three, Bauer, Kershaw, Buehler.
Wow.
Gee, wow. Wow. You know what? I'm actually surprised that
David Price might be fourth.
I'm so. You know what?
You know what Babyface sounds like right now? Do you remember that old sketch on SNL, the Superfans with the Bears? And every time they asked them what the final score was, and it would be something like Bears 252, Packers 12.
Yeah.
That's Babyface right there. It's just like the Dodgers are going to go 162-0, and we're winning all the trophies.
That's why, if you noticed, my bold strategy was to wait to ask him until the end, just because I knew I had a rough idea of how that was going to go. Also, I am indubitably impressed that you didn't pick Sandy Koufax to win the AL Cy Young just because of Brooklyn. Just at one point, I was expecting you to be like, "Oh yeah, Koufax."
Oh,
I saw your soul leave your body.
What am I missing? Batting titles?
Batting title and most home runs.
Wait,
can I guess who you're going to pick for the batting title for the NL?
Okay.
Corey Seager.
It's a toss-up.
Between who? Corey Seager and who? Corey Seager?
Mookie Betts.
Honestly, Babyface, I'm not lying. You know who I thought you were going to go with, but I don't think he's going to get enough at-bats? Austin Barnes. I thought you were going to pick Austin Barnes.
Baby Mookie. Yeah, he won't have enough at bats.
That's the dark horse. Yeah. That's going to be 3 for the batting title. And then for the AL?
I guess DJ LeMahieu.
And then for most home runs, which Dodger is going to hit the most home runs in all of baseball?
Max Muncy.
There it is.
See, I think Babyface has the same problem that I have. And I think this is a larger problem that Major League Baseball has. And this is why my hatred for Robert Manfred continues, is that baseball now has become such a regional sport.
Right.
All I follow are the Dodgers. That's all I really pay attention to. Occasionally, I'll watch the highlights on MLB Network and I'll see what other teams are doing. But when I was a kid, I would be able to tell you the starting lineup for every, like my buddy the other day when we were talking about if we could name the starting lineup for the 1986 Houston Astros, and I could still do that now. But now for the teams playing today, I don't follow other teams as intensely as I follow the Dodgers. And I think it's because baseball has fallen off of that national landscape, so to speak. I used to love the game of the week when I was a kid in NBC, when Vince Scully and Joe Garagiola used to do those games. That was like seared in my memory, and we just don't have that anymore. And so this was really hard, I have to say. When you asked me to name other people, these winners, I really struggled because I just didn't feel as confident analyzing other teams.
Yeah, I didn't get to study, so that's why I went with Dodgers.
Right.
But I'm not sure I'd differ that much if I did kind of study. But for now, I'll take the Dodgers.
Let me tell you how much of that no one believes right now. Not a damn soul believes that any of that is true. I'm old enough to remember when I watched the World Series on NBC, and Bob Costas would call some of those games and stuff like that. Yeah. So, I mean, and to be honest, I know a lot of people rag on Bob Costas, but that's one of those dudes that I wish would call more of those games. Granted, I know he does MLB Network stuff, but back in those times, sick. But
I will. And look, in honest, full disclosure, Bob Costas is in my Fight Club.
Wow.
I just realized that the majority of people in my Fight Club are all like baseball announcers, like Bob Costas, Joe Morgan, Tim McCarver. Those guys are all in my Fight Club. Bob Costas mainly just because not everyone's going to sit there and think it's because in 1988 he came out there saying that the Dodgers had no chance of winning the World Series.
Right.
It's just every time I hear Costas, I have to listen to how great baseball was in 1960s and how it was so much better in the 60s than it is now. And I just feel like Costas never gives the modern day player its due. And it's just like, hey, dude, these guys are good. All right. These guys are good. And I would have loved to have seen those guys in the 60s face hitters like that now, like facing Ichiro and facing Tony Gwynn. I mean, Tony Gwynn, if you look at Tony Gwynn's numbers against Greg Maddux, we're talking about Greg Maddux, okay? We're not talking about a chump, dude. He owned Greg Maddux.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's the one thing that just drives me crazy. Joe Morgan is just a Dodger hater, so that's why he's in my Fight Club. And Tim McCarver is just Captain Obvious. I don't have to say anything. Maybe to defend why he's in my Fight Club.
Maybe during the season we can go over your Fight Club, because I'm kind of curious to see you get riled up over this fight. I mean, I understand the Joe Morgan thing and the Tim McCarver thing. God rest the Tim McCarver soul. But that would be a fun podcast, because I mean, look how pissed. I mean, Roger's soul left his body.
That's a GIF. I wish we could have turned that moment into a GIF, because I would use that for everything.
Roger's soul is currently somewhere like over Pasadena. That's how far it's left his body. And so listen, at the end of the day, that was still fun to do, just because just for me, what made it is Roger went Dodger chalk and his soul left his body.
Exactly.
Well, on that note,
Alonso, before we end the show, I just want to give a quick shout out.
Oh yeah.
For those of you there is an exhibit that's going to be opening up at Track 16 at the Track 16 Gallery in Los Angeles. So for those of you local listeners, it's an exhibit that I want to just call your attention to. There is a book that I received an advance copy of called A Moonlight Graham, and it's a nightly baseball comic. And it's a collection of drawings from every single day of the 2020 baseball season. So the author drew whatever was the biggest moment in baseball that day or the most interesting story. So I went ahead and got an advance copy of the book. I think Dodger fans would be really, really pleased because there's a lot of Dodger drawings on there. The last 2 pages of the book are my favorite because there are drawings of when Kershaw threw out, who was it that tried to steal home in the World Series? Was it Randy Arozarena?
I think it was Arozarena.
So he has a drawing.
Was it? Who was it? Don't shake your head violently at me and tell me no.
Babyface, check me on that. But they have a drawing of Kershaw from Kershaw's view of that. And then they have he has the famous drawing of Julio on the mound getting the last strikeout. They're beautiful illustrations. Now they're going to be hanging those illustrations in the gallery for everyone to see.
Manny Margot.
Okay. So you'll be able to see.
I digress.
They will be selling also limited copies of the book on the gallery's website. So this exhibit opens on April 1st and it runs through May 22nd. If you're a baseball fan, you should definitely go check it out. If you're a Dodger fan, you should go check it out. Visitors can make reservations by visiting the gallery's website. Once again, that is Track 16 Gallery. And the name of the exhibit is Moonlight Graham, a nightly baseball comic. I'll post pictures on my Twitter so you guys can see the book. It's good stuff for baseball fans. And before Alonso butchers my Twitter, I'm just saying I made it easier for everybody. Just type in El Mero Doyer. Just type in El Mero Doyer on Twitter. It'll take you to my Twitter feed. I'll post pictures of Moonlight Graham. You guys should definitely check it out, especially if you're baseball fans.
Solid. You were telling me about it. It sounded super cool. I wish I could go to it. Alas, I cannot. But if you can, please go check it out to that website that Juan dropped. And again, thank you all for joining us on this week's edition of the Bleed Los podcast. Baseball starts next week. So by the time that this next episode drops, we'll kind of be talking about new baseball one way or another. And I'm stoked about that. And most importantly, we can talk Dodgers chalk with Roger as his soul returns to his body. I can't wait. But on that note, it's your boys. Oh, okay. So he's checking me now with the picture. You guys can't see this because this isn't a video podcast, but that's a sick picture, but you don't have to rub it in my face, Roger. That's uncomfortable.
There we go.
Cool pictures though. They look super dope. Definitely encourage you guys to go check those out. But on that note, it's your boys Alonso y Juan with the baby face gimmick in the sky. Roger, we will catch you down the road next week. Stay safe, and we'll talk to you then.